Hey, welcome to another episode of GeekOutdoors.com. So VR or virtual reality has been around a very long time now, but it's still not popular and mainstream yet. So with that being said, what about VR as a content creator? Should you use VR in 2019? And so the first thing I'm going to do is give you some of my thoughts on the advantages and cases where you would use VR, and then my overall thoughts on whether or not it is something that you should use in 2019. And so right now I'm actually using my LG 360 camera. I got this about 3 years ago whenever I got my LG G5 phone. And the very first and biggest advantage in using VR as a content creator is you give people an entirely immersive experience. It's so cool how this camera is set up. It has a camera in the front, back, and it's 360 degrees. So right now when you're watching this video, you could actually move the video around. You can see above me, behind me, the bottom. It is really cool. And this is great if you're the type of person who loves traveling and you want to give people a very unique, immersive, virtual experience that you simply can't get with just a normal phone camera or just a camera where it's just a 2D image. And so that's the first and biggest advantage. If you want to give people an entirely immersive 360-degree experience, then obviously the VR 360 camera is worth it. The second thing is whenever you are shooting in VR with these devices, most of them are really small and portable. So for most people, if they are shooting videos, they're either using their phone or they're using a camera. And even though they have become a lot smaller, they're also a lot bigger than these miniature devices. So just think of it like a GoPro, but with VR and 360 enabled. And so I feel that having that size allows you to not only capture moments that are going to be harder, but it's also a lot easier to carry around. So that is another advantage with these VR 360 devices. Now, there are more expensive VR devices that are much bigger, but for most people, I think they're going to purchase something like that. I have like the LG 360, which is really small and pocketable. And then the final advantage with VR is the fact that you are future-proofing yourself. So whenever that day comes where VR is popular and becomes the norm, then you would already have VR content available. So those are the three main advantages that I see with using VR in 2019 and beyond. So let's now go ahead and talk about like where, you know what, it doesn't really make that much sense in 2019. So the first thing is the majority of people are not watching VR content. You know, there is definitely VR content available on YouTube and other platforms, but most people aren't doing that. They're just watching static 2D videos and images. That's what most people are used to. The second thing is, even though these VR cameras, they can go to high resolutions, they're not going to go to as high resolutions as dedicated cameras or phone cameras, which allow you to get a much better video quality out of them. Now, there are more higher end VR cameras that you could buy that does give you higher resolution, but the majority of people, they're going to get something like this where, you know, it's less than 200 bucks and it's going to give you pretty good quality, but not to the level of a standard camera or smartphone. And then the other thing is with VR content, whenever you're editing it, it's just different. You know, I don't really know how to explain that. And so whenever you're editing videos, you're used to a 2D static image, but whenever you have this whole 3D content, it's different. And depending on your video editor, you might not be able to edit everything in the way that you would normally edit. So it's hard to explain unless you actually start editing 360 video. And then the final disadvantage that I see with VR in 2019 is the fact that it's more of a novelty thing. You know, even if I'm watching videos on YouTube and it's in high resolution and it's available in VR, I really don't get a lot out of it. You know, it's just an extra step for me to look around and stuff. And besides like travel videos or maybe cool stuff underwater or space, it becomes more of a novelty. And I just want to watch the content in standard 2D. And so that's kind of where overall I feel like VR as a content creator is really not necessary in 2019. About the only places where I see would be an advantage is if you want to give people a really immersive experience and if you want to future proof yourself later on as more VR content is available. So if you actually had any thoughts on this, whether you're using VR right now or you're thinking about it, be sure to leave that in the comments area below. And if you wanted to see my review of this LG 360 camera, I will also leave that in the description area as well. So as always, if you did get value out of these videos, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.